This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Get Past Your Shit, the book. This book is available by paperback or Kindle. It was written by my friend Kelly McCausey, who's also a podcaster too. I was a guest on Kelly's show, and she has a show called Love People, Make Money. Kelly takes a stand that you can get past your fears, insecurities, and tough circumstances. She knows hearing other people's stories is motivating, so she has recruited brave friends to tell theirs. If you're waiting for fears, insecurities, and tough circumstances to go away before you move towards a better life, you'll wait forever. It's time to get past your shit. To claim a free chapter and coaching program, go to getpastyourshit.com. Direct links to her book, her podcast, our episode, and any other relevant links to find where Kelly's at will be available in the show notes. All right, we have another announcement. I have a couple of virtual speaking summits coming up that I'm speaking in. The first one is on May 22nd, 2021. It starts at 12 p.m. Eastern, and that is called the We Got This Movement Virtual Speaker Summit. And I'm doing a TEDx style talk there, and you can find all the information for this one in the show notes. This is a paid ticket event, so you will have to buy a ticket to get into this virtual summit to see me speak if you want. But there are a bunch of great speakers in this. A lot of folks from the Fearless Speaking group will be speaking at this summit as well. The second one is called Back from Broken Virtual Summit. And this one is free for the first 250 people that get tickets to it. And this event will be going off on June 5th and 6th. There's about 25 to 30. Well, we got about 25 right now. I'm also working on the back end of this as a technical person. So this one, we have about 25 speakers so far. It could get up to 30 by the time we close everything out, but a lot of great people. I listened to some of the practices last night, and I got to tell you, these are some really good folks that are coming through. So the Back from Broken Virtual Summit, and you can find all that information in the show notes. Direct links to all of this are available in the show notes. And also, if you are a business, a speaker, a coach, an author that wants to promote your book, somebody that's got an online business, and you want to advertise on my platform, reach out to me at nowheretogobutupnow@gmail.com. And I will send you all of the information in the sponsor structure if you're interested. Other than that, some of these, I know a couple of months ago, for the last couple of months, we've been doing a lot of episode drops. And as it's getting closer to me going back to work, and a lot of these, I've been working on these speaker summits. And so the amount of time that I'm releasing episodes has dropped a little bit, but I'm going to try and get back to that, honestly, because the more episodes that I dropped, I noticed that I'm charting. And as I go down to, one episode a week, I fell off the charts. So I don't know if it has any kind of correlation, but, yeah, if you're out there listening, I really appreciate it. If you're supporting the show, I definitely appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you're on. All of that stuff helps. And for those that didn't know, because I didn't announce this, it just sort of, I changed the way that I was doing things, and I didn't really let anybody know what I was doing. I started doing a live stream. And so my live stream goes out to 6 different platforms. One of them, the 3 main ones are Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and then also Twitter Live or Periscope. That's where it actually lives, but it's on my profile page on Twitter. So you can find all of these episodes on video on all those locations. So the best way to find everything right now is to go to my link tree, and there is a website coming. It should be done here in the next couple of weeks. Can't wait to launch that. And you will be the first to know when that happens. And then you'll be able to go directly there to find everything about what I'm doing, including the nonprofit organization that I'm building. And we're going to have a page over there that's going to give all that information and kind of show you, how you can support and where it is and what's happening. That one will actually get its own website too at some point, but first things first, had to get the podcast done because I've had this podcast for going on 2 years now, and I just I didn't have a website the whole time, which has a lot to do with the fact that this was my first time doing this, and sometimes I just didn't know. I didn't know until I knew. And Clubhouse was a great asset for me to be able to hear about all the different things that I can do and, and what I wasn't doing actually to build my podcast and to build my audience. So if you're out there and you're supporting the show, you're listening and you're getting value out of what I'm doing, I appreciate it. And do me a favor. Subscribe, rate, or review. I'd love to hear some reviews. Actually, you know what I'd love? I'd love to get some feedback from you guys as to how you think this show is going. Do you like what I'm doing? Do you not like what I'm doing? I'd really love some feedback from you. So do me a favor. Go ahead and email me if you've got anything to say, whether it's, hey, good job. I'm really enjoying the guests that you're putting out there and what you're doing, or the opposite. I mean, if you're not, and maybe I changed something up that you didn't like, you can also express those thoughts to me as well. So just would love to be able to connect with some of you guys out there in the audience and kind of hear what you think. So with that, let's get to the show.
Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
Cheers. Caught me sipping. What's up? This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I am your host, Sean Dustin. This is your first time listening. Welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us. If you want to help support the show, do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. YouTube, subscribe, all of those places. Give me a subscribe, a follow, listen, whatever it is you need to do. Just check me out, man. Give me a chance, and I guarantee you probably won't be disappointed. Tonight, I have a special guest, and this special guest is somebody who I listen to and I watch on one of my favorite programs on YouTube, which is the Jimmy Dore Show. And his name is Ron Placone. And he's a comedian. He contributes to the Jimmy Dore Show. He's a writer for the show too. And he's a funny guy, and he's got a lot of great insight on progressive policies and politics. So another one of my progressive broadcasts to you. If you're not interested in it, then just skip over it. But if you are, come on in. We're going to have some good stuff for you. So I'm bringing him up in here. Hey, Ron.
What's up, man? How are you? I like your intro music is pretty cool, dude. That's a pretty interesting story. I was listening to that, and I was thinking, man, if I made one of those for me, it wouldn't be anywhere close to exciting. Like you get out of jail, you got nothing but the clothes on your back. Like that's a story, man. Like mine would just be like, this is Ron Placone. He went to an open mic after college, got into a comedy, eventually started making a living at it, traveled the road extensively for 45 weeks a year, had a free bar tab every night. It didn't get him into too much trouble, but occasionally it did. But he eventually got to the gig on time. Then he went to Los Angeles, and then you found out who he was, kind of. That'd be my thing.
That's funny. Yeah, the guy that I hired him off of Fiverr. He did me an intro, an outro, and in the middle, I don't know what they call that middle thing that they do for you too. But it's like...
Yeah, but I mean, that's your story, right? Like, he didn't make that up about you. No. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, it is a story, man. There's a lot more to it. And I mean, we're not really here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. But I mean, if you want to know more about it, there's a lot to it. The meth addiction lasted for 18 years. Then it went into a pill addiction that lasted another 7 years. And there's a lot of abusive behavior and stuff like that within that whole thing. So basically the last 2 years, I mean, I've had the podcast for 2 years, but I really, I've been using it and leveraging it to have people on the show, that are helping me struggle with the things that I'm trying to get through, whether it's self-sabotage, whether it's, any of the major things, like behaviors. This podcast has really become more of a...
Well, where do I fit into that? What do I help with?
You help with the fact that, like, in between all that stuff, I put in my interests, things that interest me.
Oh,
you know
right
what
on.
I mean? So progressive policies, progressive politics. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in comedians. They're funny. I like to listen to them and watch them. You're on one of my favorite shows, and also you were on Tiffany Werner's broadcast, and I was on her show as well. So, I mean, we have some mutualities here and some common ground. And, cool. I think you're a cool guy.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. No, it's cool, man. No, I was listening because I didn't know your backstory, so I was like, oh wow, this guy, right on. Well, cool. But yeah, I won't quiz you on it or anything.
Dude, I so freely talk about it openly, especially on Club.
Yeah. Well, you should. Yeah, you totally should. Oh yeah, we were talking about Clubhouse off mic. And so you're really bit by the bug, huh?
Yeah, well, the kind of conversations that are happening over there now, I don't know if it's in all of the spaces. I would imagine that it's probably not, but at least in the ones that I'm in, the podcasting ones, the speaking ones, it's really a vulnerable conversation. People are getting real over there. They're real conversations with real emotions. People are, crying, and it's really, I think, a testament to where we are and how starved we are for connection, with each other. You have that with the comedian, kind of, all the comedians, and I listened to Joe Rogan for years before I even started my own podcast. And I listened to how he would talk about the community of comedians and how they kind of stick together, and you guys kind of help each other through things, right? You're going through something mentally, maybe not all the time, but you're really there for each other. Somebody's got some sort of a thing that they need to pay for with the doctor. You've got folks that are willing to pitch in money to try and help them out. Right. And
that is true. I mean, and I'll be honest, there have been periods in my life where I sometimes overlooked that, or I don't want to say took it for granted, but yeah, you always kind of knew that, but sometimes you would kind of you would get kind of cynical towards the whole thing a little bit, because there is also that element of you're on stage alone and you're in it alone, and at the end of the day, it's like you're just it's up to you to keep the whole thing afloat. But everything you just said, like, that is totally true, and something, I think of, a few years back. Well, it was actually a while back at this point, but I had a pretty rough breakup And, I lost a condo out of the deal, and it was a really, really rough patch in my life. And yeah, I do remember, like, I never forget, like, the way it was like I just fell into a net of support, and that net was the comedy scene. And that was in Nashville. I was living in Nashville at the time. But you hear stories like that a lot all over the country. And then, yeah, it is a special thing. I guess comedy can be a kind of isolating craft because it's not like a band where you look over and you see your bandmates, or it's not like a play where you look over and see your co-actors. You are up on stage with nothing but a microphone and your words. So I guess as a result, we kind of we kind of stick together at the end of the day. I mean some of the worst human beings I've ever met in my life are comics. So it's certainly not everyone, but for the most part, there is a certain camaraderie that exists, and it is a special thing.
Yeah, and so with what you just said, I think people are starting to find that in this space in Clubhouse, you have that. You're able to. It's a more organic way of getting to know somebody and following somebody. So versus, okay, we can go and look at a post, and somebody can, throw some words on there, some quotes, whatever. We don't even know if that was them that even made that quote up, or it's just a shiny picture that, okay, well, let me look at all their other shiny pictures, and I'm going to decide if I want to follow them or not. Right. Well, since it's a link to your bio in Clubhouse, so there's there's layers of where you go to. So when people are speaking, which it's really difficult, and since you speak, it's hard to, I don't know, man, there's something about the listening to somebody speak and that moves you. And if you understand tonation and all of the stuff that goes with that, I believe that it's really hard to fool somebody into who you are when you're speaking in a not in a professional way, but just like in a social way, right? Because you kind of let your guard down. You're speaking and not trying to impress anybody. You're just talking. And when you're just talking and people are listening to you, when I listen to somebody, I go, oh, wow, I like what they just said. I go hit their bio. I look a little bit more about them. Oh, look what okay. So, wow, I intersect with this person right here, and we've got this in common. And then I go down to see if they got an Instagram or they got a Twitter, and I'll go and I'll hit their Instagram and I'll look there even further. And if I like what I see there, then I'll go ahead and follow them. And so it's a lot different than the models that, I don't know if you've been in the groups in Facebook where, for the podcasting ones, follow for follow, like for like. And it's like, okay, you got a bunch of people that are following you, but I mean, they're just following you because they want numbers, and it's inorganic. And so I would much.
Clubhouse it is a more organic connection because there's also not that whole like, oh, you should make more people follow you. It's actually good to follow more people on Clubhouse because you find out if you're interested in what someone's saying, we'll find out what other rooms spend time in, find out what other stuff is out there. And I'm still learning it, dude. I'm pretty new. I've only been on it for, I want to say maybe a month.
Really? Yes.
I don't have the little new thing. You know how like when you first joined, you have the party hat. I've graduated from my party hat, so I don't have the party hat anymore. But I mean, I want to say, I guess you have that for like the first 2 weeks or so. So I've been on for, I want to say, about a month.
Okay.
I could actually probably find, because I remember I was interested in it because I was just hearing about it. And a buddy of mine just posted, I think on Facebook actually, that he had some invites, and I messaged him and I asked. No, I actually don't know how to invite people yet. I haven't figured that out. I know I have some invites that I can invite people eventually, but I haven't figured that out yet. I mean, I'm sure it's easy, and I just haven't done it yet, but there's some setting I need to switch to be able to do that part.
Yeah,
but anyway, I like it. I mean, I've used it for a couple different things. I use it for just kind of like, it's a more fun LinkedIn. Like I use it to connect with other people in writing or film and TV or podcasting or comedy or whatever else. So I use it for that. I also will randomly use it to try to get better at Italian.
Okay.
So I'll just go in Italian, which sometimes makes me nervous because I mean, I have a reasonable grasp of the language, like, but I'm not fluent. So like sometimes I get worried because I know like now other people are like reporting what people are doing on Clubhouse, you know? So I always get nervous. Like, what if I'm in some Italian room and they're actually saying horrible things, but I just understand a couple words here and there, so I have no idea what they're actually talking about. And then someone's like, Ron Placone was in this really fucked up room where they were saying all this horrible shit, and he wasn't. And it's like, I didn't know what they were saying. I was just trying to learn a language. I didn't know. So I mean, I'm joking. Nothing like that would ever happen, but you know, it's still like sometimes I think about that. Where I'm like, I hope they're not talking about something terrible because I'm just picking up words. But usually when I'm in those rooms, I kind of have a grasp on what they're talking about to an extent. And so I use it for that. And then recently I used it for something way different. There's a screenplay I'm working on where I wanted to get into like basically into the mind of the uber capitalist, you know, not Uber, but like the super capitalist. So I went into this real estate room and I got exactly what I needed out of it. Cause this dude, he was talking about how you can evict people during the pandemic. Which by the way, if you're curious, it's a landlord's lien is how they can do it. That's how they're able to still get away with it. And in some states, they don't permit this, but in some states they do. And if it's in your lease, they can technically still evict you. And listening to this dude and the stuff he was saying, he goes, yeah, you know, these people have money. They have money. I mean, he said something like, you see discarded Xboxes on the side of the road. And he's going on and on. He's like, look, I'll tell you what, it might not make you the most popular person in the world, but I brought this up at the landlords convention on Zoom at da-da-da. I got a standing ovation. Like he's basically bragging that he was talking about the loophole on how to evict people, and a bunch of other folks were applauding him for this and standing up for him. So it was like, I came looking for evil, and I feel like I got it. I got what I needed for the script, which I guess is a very, very minor way of making lemonade out of lemons, because the fact that this guy is doing that is a lot worse than me getting some inspiration for a script I'm writing. But I mean, he's going to exist either way. I mean, that's
and then those type of people will exist no matter what. You know, it's just the way that the world works. You know, he's a licensed legal loser. You know, I mean, but you know that's.
It was something, man. It was something to behold. It was something to so I mean, I try not to make a habit out of doing stuff like that, because that's just, you know, pretty depressing and heavy, and things are depressing enough and heavy enough right now. But I was looking for some ideas for a project. It's just, so I went into like rooms like that. I know people that do that. I mean, you hear the comedian Chris Dillon, he did a whole segment on just the clubhouse rooms he would go into where he was saying stuff like it's these billionaires talking about how they're going to rule the world, basically. I haven't been to anything quite like that, but I have been in rooms where it's like, oh, this guy owns a ton of, this is a super powerful person who's talking right now about, you know, how they de-stress.
Yeah.
so it's an interesting place, man. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like YouTube. You can really just go in and type in what it is you're looking to find or you want to hear. And there's tons of clubs and you know, there's tons of different rooms that are at that time or on a schedule. And you can find out whatever you want. Lex Friedman's in there quite often. So is Brett Weinstein and Eric Weinstein. They're in there quite a bit. So yeah, I like it. It's really, I don't think anybody's ever really experienced that, like that type of communication and that openness. And like most of the rooms that I go into, people are giving value before they're taking it. And
I agree.
That's completely opposite of what we're used to, right?
It is. No, in many ways it is. It's kind of like, and they say that right away. Like when you're trying to learn how to use Clubhouse, they're like, give before you take. And again, like that thing we were talking about where it's like you want to make connections, you want to follow. It's like a way cooler, more personal LinkedIn in many ways.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the most thorough of explanations, but I think it's kind of in the ballpark. And what I'm curious about is what kind of life it'll have once the pandemic's over.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I'm curious about too is that, all right, well, how long are they going to let it go? This type of free speech where it's unfiltered. You can talk about anything you want in there. And the crazy thing is too, it's crazy how people are censoring themselves right now. Like even when something will come up, like I was in a room last night and something came up about the pandemic and, the masks and like all of the stuff that, that could go either way, and people somebody came in and started the conversation and then it like quickly got pushed away and nobody wanted to talk about it. And that's like, okay, well, I mean, I get that you don't want to talk about it, but we should be talking about it because there are so many inconsistencies around it from, different camps of medical professionals saying one thing and another camp, the other half of them are saying another thing when we're all biological beings. And I mean, biology is biology, right? I mean, if there's only like one, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's a lot of things that don't make sense to me about what's going on. So I hope that they don't come in and try to regulate it, just like they talked about doing it with podcasting and also too with the YouTube news programs. They're trying to, ban those because they don't want us to be.
They've been trying to do that for a while. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of it because, it is a pretty heavy thing and it's affected a lot of people. It's affected me. I mean, it's affected a lot of people. But it's not like this is new. I mean, this has been, pretty much from Adpocalypse, which I want to say was, what was that, 2017, 2018, I think. I mean, that was a couple years ago at this point. I mean, but ever since then, it's been, it's been a rocky ride ever since then. And I don't know what the future holds in that regard. I mean, I feel like there's always going to be, or at least I'd like to think there's always, as long as there's a relative free and open internet, which, we do have the risk of losing. That's why I talk about municipal broadband and net neutrality all the time. But, as long as we have that, there will always be some type of platform out there that'll be, viable. But I think we're going to be living in a post-YouTube world eventually. I don't know when, but I do think that's going to happen where you're just, I think, and this is just an educated guess. I don't have any concrete evidence to support this, but I think at the end of the day, YouTube just really wants YouTube TV to be successful. And that's kind of where they want to take the brand. They want to be this sort of cable alternative where you get these news channels in addition to everything that's offered on YouTube. And they want to kind of be a separate thing from just users submitting videos.
Yeah.
And that's, that's their business, I guess. But yeah, so I do think you're going to see a day where a lot of the YouTube streaming kind of becomes a thing of the past and people are all going to be on something else. And I don't think it's going to be anything that's currently in the ethers. Like, I don't think it's just going to be Twitch or anything like that. I think there's going to be some, like, a next generation of things that sprout up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there always is.
Maybe.
Yeah. Who knows? I just hope that they don't do anything with it anytime soon because I'm enjoying it immensely and it's helping me to heal because I'm able to go in there and tell my story, talk about things that, and have conversations that most people aren't having these days, and a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing in there are usually things that you wouldn't hear outside of or usually within the four walls of a mental health person's office. Really? Yeah. And so
I haven't had anything super heavy. I mean, I guess it depends on what rooms you're going to. Like if you're going to rooms about like addiction or whatever, I guess. But I've mostly been going to rooms like writing, film, TV, stuff like that. So I haven't encountered anything like crazy heavy. I mean, I've encountered some really interesting stuff, but nothing like super personal, really. Like I've actually, my experience has kind of been the opposite. Like I asked a kind of fun, like personable question in a room once, and everyone just sort of was like, "Whoa, that's not the topic," And it was, maybe it was just because it was so goofy, but it was a small room, and it was kind of a funny tech question because I was just like, look, sometimes I overlook things, so I got to ask y'all because it's a small room, and I feel like you won't make fun of me, although it's okay if you do. But is there a way you could DM on Clubhouse? Because I hear people say DM me. And I keep wondering if they just mean Instagram or like their email address that they have on their profile, or if they literally mean there's a way to DM on Clubhouse and I just don't know how to do it yet. Because it's possible I'm just overlooking something. And they were like, yeah, no, they mean like Instagram or something. There's no way to DM on Clubhouse. But they thought it was kind of, like they weren't amused or wanting to be more personable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. I mean, maybe it was just like too weird or whatever, but. Yeah, the
podcasting ones are really cool because there's a few people that I follow, and it's funny because when I'll pop into a room, all of a sudden I'll see like 4 or 5 people that follow me pop up in the audience, and they're wherever I go, they are following me, and like because I give a lot of free advice and stuff like that for starting a podcast and kind of what it takes and all the different aspects of it, and some of the things that I've learned how to streamline, which is guest booking process that was really that killed me when I first began because I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I was just some guy that had an idea and ran with it and learned from YouTube. So, and then a lot of the rooms too I'm in are criminal justice reform, prison reform, stuff like that. Because I did start a nonprofit after all of this, so I'm a 501c3 that I'm building a program right now. Oh, cool. Yeah, for transitional age youth. Males 18 to 24. I'm trying to build a living facility for them because I don't know if you're in California. Are you?
Yeah. I live in Los Angeles.
So the Youth Authority in California is shutting their doors between 2023 and 2025. They're no longer accepting anybody in there to get sentenced there after July 1st of this year. So there's going to be a huge need for like, where are these guys going to go? Now that they're not going to go there. I mean, so it's going to be community-based programs. There are going to be other things like that. I partnered with another organization in my community, and they deal with juveniles, transitional age youth, and then young adults, male and female. And so what I'm going to do is I'm partnering with them to start a podcast for their program. And I'm going to take 16 to 21 year olds, and they got to be separated because you can't have the juveniles with the adults. So maybe probably 2 separate days, and teach them how to, even in conceptualize like what a podcast is, because it's like way more than just saying, I want to start a podcast. All right, get a microphone. Sure. You've got to have some planning into it. You've got to know what there's a lot more that goes to it. And the main reason why is because podcasting gave me my voice back, right? When I was coming back out and I felt like, addiction and everything else, and I had something to say, but I wasn't really sure, if anybody wanted to listen to me, but I knew I needed to get this story out because it affected me. And so once I really started doing that, and the more that I started talking about it, the more I started healing from it. And my confidence grew, my self-esteem grew, everything blossomed out of that. And so I really want to bring that to them and teach them how to do that. And at some point, when I get the couple students that rise above the rest of them, because that always happens, you've got your people that excel. And when that one guy comes up or girl comes up and I see that they're capable, they're going to replace me, and now I can move on to do other things, and they're going to run that program for this community-based program. So
that's awesome, man. That's really cool.
So that's kind of what I'm into currently at the moment. So one thing that I want to know is, how did you get into comedy, and then how did it lead you into being a part of Jimmy Dore and what he's doing specifically?
Yeah, I kind of in my fake song intro was actually a pretty accurate descriptor. I started, it's kind of funny in a way. I came full circle because in college I got involved in radio, and first it was campus radio, then it was community radio, and then I wanted to kind of do like morning radio, like sketches and talk and stuff like that. And I was really into politics just as a person. And so I thought that was like what I wanted to do, like do like a funny, like lefty morning show basically, or something like that. And this was right around the time Air America was going and places like that. So I was intrigued by the whole thing. And, I saw this article online that said a good way to get into all that, or a way to get into all that, is through stand-up comedy. And I didn't really know much about stand-up, but I played in bands in high school and stuff like that. So I thought, well, I being on stage, I'm not a stranger to that. I can get into that. So I tried it, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I failed miserably for a while, but I kept doing it. And then I moved out to Seattle, where there was a very good comedy scene. And I went out there because I just wanted, a different experience. I just wanted to like go out west. I never really spent time out west before. Now I've lived in the West Coast for a good portion of my adult life, but at the time I was like just out of college. I went to Indiana University. So I moved out to Seattle, got really into the comedy scene there, started taking it, very seriously. And I eventually started getting what we just call road gigs, which are exactly what they sound like. You get booked on the road. And I mean, I still, to this day, on an old computer, have my first itinerary saved, because you would get booked like by these, and they still exist. They're like these different agencies that like book a bunch of comedy nights all across the country. So they'll book you to do a run. And I remember my first run, it was pretty insane actually, because I was going from Seattle to, I think, like Pocatello, Idaho, to like Bozeman, Montana, to like Idaho Falls. And it was this crazy. And there are these things that exist in the industry called triple runs. And they're kind of like a rite of passage in the comedy world, because there are these gigs that are in that part of the country where there is a lot of driving, where you might be driving like 10 hours in between gigs and shit like that. But it's a lot of fun. And I remember, like, I just felt like I was on top of the world. Like, I was like, I'm going on the road. Yeah. And I remember I was so excited. I was just on cloud nine. I mean, I still remember that week. It was like one of the coolest weeks of my life. And then you just started getting booked more and more often. And and then I went back to Pennsylvania to go to graduate school. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, so I went back to Pittsburgh. And when I was in grad school, I started doing a lot of weekends. Like, I was getting a lot of weekends booked, and it was going okay. And I really, I finished my master's, and I was trying to figure out, do I go on for my PhD, or do I really take a chance on this comedy thing? And I just realized that every time I had to miss a road gig, every time I couldn't take a road gig because there was no way I could pull it off. And I really tried to pull it off the absolute best I could. I mean, I drove across state lines overnight to be on campus the next morning. I wrote most of my papers in a hotel room on the road. I mean, I really did balance them both and not phone in either one. I took comedy I would go to open mics to work on material right after class. I would, like save a spot ahead of time so I could just come straight from class, because I would get to class after signups, and I was just really committed. And I realized, I'm like, look, I really hated missing a shitty bar gig in Virginia or something because of school. So clearly this is more important to me. And clearly I really want to frickin' do this. So I decided not to go on for the PhD. And I made that decision at the beginning of like the spring semester. So I realized, I was like, okay, I graduate in May. So in May, I'm just going to be out of school, and maybe I can be a comedian for that month. Maybe I'll make enough money for 1 month that I can be a comedian. And so I just started booking as many shows as I could. And I knew that I wanted to book for May and beyond, which summer is actually a pretty tough time for stand-up in that part of the country, because there aren't as many shows around because people want to be outside longer, in that part of the country. In California, it doesn't matter, but in other parts of the country, it does. But still, I just really was militant about it, and I booked enough gigs that I was able to do nothing but comedy for like a couple months. And I'm like, oh, wow, and maybe if I start booking ahead, I'll be able to do it for a couple more months. And that was almost 10 years ago now. That was in 2012. So
that's awesome, man.
Still moving on 1 month at a time. But then as far as Jimmy, at one point, both of us were on the Young Turks network, and we met through that. I was just one of the, outside correspondent people that was on their network. And that's how I met Jimmy initially. I would go to LA every now and again. I would try to do some of their shows, like some of their, I think a lot of these shows they don't have anymore, but they used to have like different types of shows on the network. Like they had this show called On Point, and I did that once with Jimmy in, what year would that have been? I want to say maybe 2013 or something. And so I knew him, and I knew who Jimmy was. I mean, I watched Jimmy's first special when I was in college. Like I knew who he was. But then we met then, and I was like, oh, you're Jimmy Dore. Cool to meet you. I know I watched your first special, and we would just, once a year or so, I'd email him. If I, liked a phone call, I'd be like, oh, this phone call made me laugh. How are you? And then when I moved to LA, I it's one of those things. When you move to LA, you're pretty much starting all over again. Like I had been on the road full time for 4 or 5 years at that point. It didn't matter. None of that mattered. I was just basically a new comic again in LA, which was fine. I was stoked. Yeah. And at that time, I was doing a lot of college gigs. And that was, basically what paid my bills. I would leave town to go for college gigs, which were good because I'd only be gone for like a day or two. And then I spent the rest of the time in LA, just kind of doing odd jobs when I had to get by. Like I was a pet sitter and dog walker, which actually really, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, would it be weird if I emailed some of my old clients just to ask how their dogs and cats are, because I do genuinely think about them and miss them. Like, I don't know if that's appropriate, right. But I think about some of my old clients. I'm just like, I wonder how Milo's doing. I think I loved that freaking dog. I really did. I loved that freaking dog. I love so many of those dogs, like so much. I really did. And so I really loved being a pet sitter, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do with my life. But yeah, so they say in LA, when you get to town and you're starting all over again, you should just go, anywhere and everywhere you can and just try to talk to whoever. So I was doing the whole, go to the Comedy Store, just hang out and just see who you might be able to talk to and just introduce yourself and go to open mics, work on material, meet people and be social. And I've never been a super social butterfly guy. Like I've never been like that, what's a good word for it? Like super, like,
networker.
What's Yeah, like I'm not bad at it, but I'm not great at it. Like in group situations, I kind of want to just be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
So I'm not super good at like, oh yeah, we should collaborate. Like I'm not super great at that. So I would try to like be in places where I had a little bit of a point of connection. So I would look at like the show listings and stuff like that. And I'd be like, well, who do I know? And sure enough, about 6 weeks after I was in town, I look at the club calendars for all the different comedy clubs, and at Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank, Jimmy Dore is headlining. And this was just stand-up. This wasn't a live Jimmy Dore show. This was before he was doing that as frequently, I'm pretty sure. But, I was like, I know Jimmy. So I showed up to the show, and I watched it. And that was when he was starting to sell more tickets, like more people were like his show was just growing. I mean, he definitely had a following for a long time, but it was growing to the point where he was really filling up rooms. I mean, the show was sold out, and it was a bunch of lefties in the audience and stuff. And I was like, this is pretty cool. This is badass. What's going on right now? I didn't see this at my road gigs. This wasn't something you see in the world I'm just coming from. So I waited until after I went up to him, and I'm like, hey, Jimmy, he goes, I know you. And I'm like, yeah, it's Ron Placone. And, we met, and he goes, well, what's up, man? I'm like, I moved here. And he goes, oh, good. Weren't you living in like Oklahoma or something? And I was like, no, Nashville. And he goes, oh, all right. And I was like, dude, I'd love to, collaborate, man. I know you're expanding the show. I'd love to be involved. Like maybe I could, maybe you give me a shot.
Yeah, right.
And he goes, hey, sure, man. Yeah, we should chat. And he invited me to do his show, and I went. And then he invited me again, and I went. And I guess it started going okay. And then he was like, "Hey, man, you should do some writing for this show." And I started writing for the show, and he did some of my jokes at a live show, and it went really well. It kind of just connected with the audience pretty good. And he goes, "You did a good job. They really liked the stuff you wrote. Did you hear them?" And I was like, yeah, I heard them. It was pretty freaking awesome. And then it just blossomed into, what it is.
That's a great story, man. So what advice would you have, or not advice, but what misconceptions do you think people have when they're first trying to get into doing comedy? What are the things that they may have misconceptions about? And does that question make sense?
Yeah, sure. No, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, because it kind of doesn't make sense to me, but it does. So is it as coming out as weird to you as it is to me?
No, I mean, I didn't think so. Maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I think a lot of people, this is the way I feel. And if you ask 10 comics this question, you will get 10 different answers. But, my take on it is there is no one way that works for everybody. There are a couple things that are applicable to 99% of us. And that one thing is well, it's not one thing, but those things, as far as I'm concerned, are the following. Write as much as you can. Try to write every day. And you can't do this right now, but when you can, and I guess you kind of can with Zoom, but it's not quite the same, but get on stage as much as you possibly can, especially when you're starting out. Like as much as you possibly can. Not to the point where you'll just completely burn yourself out, but as much as you possibly can. At least a couple times a week. At least. I think that's, when I was really trying to build stand-up and really trying to hone that craft and figure out what it means to be a great stand-up. I mean, I was getting on stage, 5-6 times a week. Wow. And I loved it. I loved it. And, I still, even now, I'll still go to an open mic every time I have to. Because, in LA, it's a lot tougher to get booked at decent club spots because you're competing with some of the biggest comedians in the world, literally. So, although Joe Rogan left, so now there might be a little more room now that Rogan and a couple heavy hitters have left, but still, so, I would still go to an open mic every now and again just to work on new material and stuff like that. And to make sure I didn't get, rusty. And especially like right before a tour or something, I'd try to get up a couple times to, get ready to go on the road. And so I think that's pretty much the only advice worth taking. I think a lot of comics, myself included, at least, you kind of think there is just one set way to get to where you want to be. There isn't. And, comics that will try to give you this roadmap of what to do and what not to do, I think a lot of times they mean well, but it might be really shitty advice. Yeah. It might be like a lot of comics, like, and again, I'm sure they mean well, but sometimes I'm not saying that you can't write together or that a comic might not have a great tag that'll really work for your joke. Of course, that happens all the time. But sometimes it's like a comic will give joke advice and I'll like overhear it or something. I'll be like, you're not giving them advice on their joke. You're telling them how you would do their joke. Yeah. You're like basically giving them their joke, but with your persona. So it's not going to work for them. You know why? Because they're not fucking you. So it's not authentic anymore. And I think people mean well when they do that, but it's not good advice. And I've seen comics take really shitty advice before, and you kind of feel bad because, and that's why I'm always very, like, I don't want to give someone advice that might not be applicable to them. So I always just say, when people ask me, which, for a long time, no one gave a shit what I had to say, but now I get asked that a little more often. And I'm always like, look, I think the only advice I can give that's really worth taking is write as much as you can, get on stage as much as you can, and everything else, you'll start figuring it out because no two cases are the same. I mean, if you're trying to do something similar to what I'm doing or you're kind of into some of the same things as me, well, then I can, kind of offer you what I've learned and stuff like that. But, every comic is different. And I mean, hey, I'll put it this way. I had a club owner say to a group of us, and this was his sage advice, never talk about politics or religion. If I took that advice, I would not have a career. I obviously talk about politics a good bit. My first album was called Agnostic Holiday. So I did not take that advice. And if I did, I wouldn't have a freaking career.
No, that's great. That's great advice. Because, everything is it's different for everybody in everything, in every aspect of everything, from diets and how we eat, different foods affect us differently because we're not all the same. So it's that's really where it's at. Another thing I want to kind of veer over into the progressive, policies, politics, whatever you want to call it, aspect of kind of what you do. And are you familiar with Steve Grumbine?
Yeah, I know that name. He's
Real Progressives.
He's the MMT. Yeah, he has Real Progressives, which I think they're rooted in Pennsylvania, where I'm from. I think so. I want to say Steve is. I know that Savage Joy used to do stuff with them. She doesn't anymore. She's with Roar Media now, but I know she is for sure in Pennsylvania, and I want to say some of the other folks are too, but I can't. I don't know that for sure. But yeah, short answer. Yeah, I'm familiar with him. I know who he is.
Yeah, I've had him on my show. So I went on this little, if you want to call it, trying to figure out where I fit politically, right? Because I'd never, up until this last year, I'd never voted before. I didn't actually think that I could since I'm a felon, and I found out that I could. So for 2016,
in California, you can?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I did.
Yeah. I know every state's different. That's awesome. I mean, I think all felons should be allowed to vote. And, yeah, I know that's not the case in every state. I think they were fighting I think it was Ohio they were fighting for it recently. I don't know if it ended up passing or what, but I think they were trying to get felons the right to vote in Ohio. I want to say it was Ohio, but that's good. Yeah, I'm thrilled to hear that in California.
Yeah. So what I ended up doing is I had him on the show to talk about modern monetary theory, and he kind of ran me through, progressive politics, or actually how to figure out like where you fit. And then I had Spike Cohen on to talk about libertarians and like, what are you guys offering? What for somebody who doesn't know anything. And so I was just trying to feel it out. And
well, who sold you better? Where do you think you fit in?
I don't know. I like more of the people that I like are progressive people, people that follow progressive stuff like Jimmy Dore, Steve Grumbine, the folks that did the true crime documentary series, The Con.
I'm not familiar with that.
You haven't seen The Con?
No.
Oh man, you got to check that out. So I was able to screen this true crime documentary series, and it really it broke it down in layman's terms. And it's like 6 hours long, right? And I literally watched this thing 3 times. So I spent 18 hours watching this documentary. And it was so fascinating to me because they broke down the 2008 financial crisis in layman's terms to where the average guy could understand it. Like everything that The Big Short didn't tell you, they did, including all the whistleblowers, everything, the people that tried to come forward and weren't allowed. And, because in a bureaucracy, it only goes as high as they'll let it go. Right. When you try to whistleblow or bring light information. And, so Patrick Lavelle, Eric Vaughn, and a couple of other folks I've had on my show. And, it was a great series. And Steve Grumbine now, they started one, and I'll put it on the ticker tape below, The Real Untouchables, which is a series that they started. And basically they're having all of these people that were on that show come and talk and have like a dialogue for that. And so they really called out the establishment and, the financial, fuckery that goes on, and all of that. So yeah, I would check it out, man. It's an awesome series, and it really paints the picture of like how it worked and how the top was really involved in the whole scheme of it. Right. Mm-hmm. And then on the backside of that, I ended up, running across this woman who did 3 years in federal prison. And she was actually helping people stay in their homes in 2009. She was calling out illegal foreclosures. She helped like 800 black families stay in their homes. She was in the DC, Baltimore area or Baltimore, Maryland area. She was on the board of the NAACP. And because she wouldn't play ball with some of the bigger, people above, like, I don't know, the wealthier people that were trying to tell her not to quit saying they were illegal foreclosures, but they were. And they all find loopholes how to get people out of their homes. Right. And, they ended up tying her in with a conspiracy and all this other stuff. I mean, this lady's a PhD. Why would she do that? It just didn't make any sense. So she did 3 years and she got out. And, now she went to the Supreme Court, and she's on her way back to the Supreme Court, and she's speaking out about it now. And, I talk to a lot of people that are, justice impacted, and to the point where, like, I have so many people that I talk to that are in the so if you think about it, most people are usually probably 1 to 3 people removed, or somebody that has been impacted by the justice system in some way or shape or form or other. Right. Sure. And so my goal now is to, start a network, justice impacted network, and start throwing channels in there that have to do with certain aspects of being justice impacted. And hopefully that's going to be the catalyst that helps to bring attention to what I'm doing and funding, for the nonprofit and the housing facility. So it's,
yeah, I have a buddy named, Ryan Leone that I think you would like, if you know who
no,
that is.
I don't know the name.
He's an author, and he has a YouTube channel now that I think is pretty popular. And I met him at a reading years ago in LA, and I got his book, and I enjoyed it. His book's really good. It's called Wasted Talent, and I think he has another one coming out too. But I read his book, and then we just kind of, I did an interview with him, and then we just sort of became friendly. And then we reconnected. We reconnected a couple years down the road because a friend of his was actually a really big fan of the Jimmy Dore Show. And he's like, dude, one of my friends got all excited when he found out that we knew each other. I'm like, well, cool, man. It's good to reconnect with you. And then, we got lunch and kind of caught up and reconnected. But yeah, he's done some time and he's, and in his case, he's made some mistakes in his life, and he, admits to that. He has done, some bad things in his life. I mean, I don't know if you have or not. It's not my business, but, he definitely has, and he, admits to that. But he's, really tried to turn his life around and has been turning his life around, and he's, doing well as a writer now, and he writes screenplays, and I think he has a nonprofit that he's been trying to develop too, but I haven't chatted with him in a while. But yeah, he seems like somebody you would benefit connecting.
Yeah,
with.
I'd definitely love to talk to him because I mean, if he needs help starting his nonprofit, I had a lawyer or somebody I interviewed had a lawyer that did it pro bono, and I started asking her questions like I normally do when I get curious about something, and she connected me with her, and she did that whole process for me for free, pro bono. And so even the 501c3, all of that stuff got done by her. So I'm in the process of putting a board together right now and sort of honing in exactly what it is I want to do. I got a meeting tomorrow with a couple of lawyers to try and see how I can do it legally, and or make sure what I'm doing is legal. And if it's not, then how do we figure out how to make it legal and make this thing work? Right. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I mean, you speak out quite a bit about different things, the squad and how they're just, the Justice Democrats are just Democrats. They're not really anything, they slid in there under the, assumption that they were going to, push Medicare for all and all the things that, with this pandemic. And I'm one of the people that my medical is attached to my wages. And, if I hadn't been lucky enough through this thing, I mean, I probably wouldn't have medical, and neither would my daughter. And these are real things and real issues that can be done. I mean, there's no reason why they can't, especially with MMT. And if you believe in MMT and you understand what modern monetary theory is, our taxes never make it back around to fund anything. They have plenty of money. All they do is just create it. They are the currency creator.
Well, they just create it. I mean, not only do they create it, but it's like you also have to factor in Wall Street and the estimated worth of Wall Street, where it's like if you even just tax them a little bit, which even a lot of MMT folks will agree, like, yeah, we should just do that because they just have way too freaking much. Like they shouldn't have that much. But so yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and I think. Well, anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. What was your question?
No, keep going. Expand your thought. I want to hear it.
Well, I just think this year has really shown just how hard electoralism in general has completely just. I don't even want to say abandon us because it never had our back in the first place. And, we have a system that is just rotten to its core. And is that the squad's fault? Well, of course not. It was rotten to the core long before they came around. But that doesn't mean that gives them a pass to not use leverage when they have it. It's almost like, okay, we sent you into this burning building and we know that you're outnumbered and we know that you don't have enough to really put out this fire, but here's a hose to get started. And then you go back in and you're like, how's that hose working out? And you find out they didn't use the hose at all, but they nicknamed the fire Mama Bear. And you're like, okay, this is not what we thought was going to go down. So, I mean, yeah, the rot of the system is far beyond them. I mean, they're not anywhere close to the biggest problem, but it just goes to show you that, you don't really have any allies to look to. And if you're going to tell me that all these people are going to do is tweet nice, well, that's not enough. And I think that you have to recognize that systemic failure, and you really have to. I mean, I think nothing is going to get better without, first of all, just local community engagement and activism at the local level, and then just direct action that leads to something bigger. Like, I think we need a general strike. I think there is no other answer.
Yes.
If there's a better answer, I'm listening. Please let me know what it is. But I think general strike is the only way to kind of get what we need. Because, I mean, the last time labor was truly organized in this country, really organized, and that doesn't mean they got along on everything. They didn't. But the last time they were organized just enough, and I'm talking the socialists, the communists, the anarchists, the unions, labor, it was the same time we got a New Deal. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. And they didn't get along on everything. I mean, Lucy Parsons, Emma Goldman, Eugene Debs, like all these people, they had differences. They butted heads. They differed on strategy, but they were united just enough to really get systemic change in the country. And that's the last time anything like that happened. And through years of McCarthyism, through years of propaganda, the left has been just decimated in the United States. I mean, we haven't had a true victory in almost 100 years, literally. Yeah. So it's a very fractured thing. And now I feel like we're starting to gel again. It's starting to, I guess I wasn't alive for the first one, so I don't know for sure. But it feels like there's a gelling happening that has not happened in my lifetime at the very least. And it's still a very fractured thing and a very imperfect thing. But you kind of hope we can get along just enough to get a mass action going, be it a general strike or something similar. And I think general strike's the only way. I think it's general strike or bust. I really do.
Well, it's the only thing that's going to get people's attention, right? It's the corporation's attention. Yeah. And I think that we should have done that in the beginning of the pandemic when we were all getting paid to stay at home and nobody. So the problem with the general strike and what people don't do and being in a union is you've got folks that have overextended themselves to where they cannot not go to work. Right. And that's what keeps them from doing a general strike is because, well, I got the family, I got this, I got all these bills to pay for. I got the wife that's, accustomed to the life that she's living. And if, I don't keep this boat floating and she might go and find somebody else to hop on a ship with,
Well, it's worse than that, man. I mean, it's a lot of people, and this is by design. So, I don't fault we the people for the fact that there's not a general strike. It's nobody's fault. It just takes a lot of organizing during an unprecedented time. And I don't have all the answers. I don't know who does. And also we don't have the Eugene Debs of our generation. We don't have the Lucy Parsons of our generation, the Emma Goldmans. I don't know where they are, but we need them. We really do. And I think it's, people are worried about losing their home. People are worried about not being able to feed their children. People are worried about not being able to get their medicine. And they're living paycheck to paycheck as is. So, yeah, they're in a situation where they really don't have a choice. And I think that's where really extensive mutual aid comes in, where people are looking out for their communities to allow something like a general strike to be a possibility. And it's going to take it's going to take food supplies. It's going to take childcare. It's going to take doctors. It's going to take doctors being on board where it's like, okay, in case something happens while this strike is going on, will you help out as much as you can? If someone gets injured or if someone, it's going to take a mass community effort, but I don't know what other option there is. Like I just think that has to happen. I mean, when people were saying things like Joe Biden is going to be our FDR, that was comically ridiculous on so many levels. We all know the only marks Joe Biden has even heard of is Groucho, but Joe Biden could be an LBJ. And what I mean by that, LBJ was a shitty politician and an asshole. But LBJ signed some pretty okay things, some really great things, actually. Why did LBJ do it? Was it because he had a change of heart? No. It's because he was scared shitless what would happen if he didn't. It was because he knew that the people would just say, hey, we've had enough, and just go on strike or whatever else. He knew that would happen if he didn't sign the things that he signed, so he did. So we have a chance that if Joe Biden looks out and he says, these people they're going to shut shit down. They are going to shut shit down if I don't do this, this, and this. I think it'll happen. I think Joe Biden will be like, I don't have a choice. I think any president would be like, I don't have a choice. So Joe Biden's not going to be our FDR, but Joe Biden might be our LBJ in a best case scenario. So let's make him be that LBJ.
Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of Biden just because he was the one that caused the 90. He signed the 94 crime bill. I mean, or authored it. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess he put his signature on it. I'm sure a group like ALEC are the ones that actually wrote the damn thing.
I think he participated in it, didn't he? I mean, he says he did. He takes credit for it.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of these politicians, the lobbying companies write all their stuff for them. All they do is just they copy and paste, their name into it, and look what I did,
He ran it through spell check.
Right? Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I mean, and then now he's, hopefully he starts to fix that problem. But I mean, who knows? He said he's going to, do the things with the prisons, but none of the prisons that he's talking about stopping the privatization of, it has to do with the federal prisons and the federal.
Yeah. Isn't it like, it's like 0.5% or something like that, that whole prison thing? He said it was like this very small percentage.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with the federal prisons, which Unicor is in, which all of the money gets made through Unicor. And these guys are making $1, I think they can top out at $2 an hour. And they're, I talked to a woman that was locked up, and I was talking with her, and she was an accountant for one of the Unicors, and she said that they made like 500 million or 500,000. They made some exorbitant amount of money there, and like we're paying $44,000 a year to house one inmate for 1 year, and you have a self-sustaining ecosystem of commerce coming out of this prison. Why are we paying for that? If you could sustain yourself and still make a profit, I don't get it. And so, there's just a lot of, in every aspect, when you really start looking at it, you've got the prison industrial complex, you've got the financial industrial complex, you have all of these other things that are all legs of the global octopus, if you want to call it that. And they all kind of run on the same model. So, yeah, I sent you my link tree because there's a documentary in one of those links, and if you see it, it's called Everything's a Rich Man's Trick. And that is like a summation of the last 100 years in 3.5 hours. And I interviewed the guy that wrote it, or not wrote it, but it was his documentary like last Saturday. His name's Francis Richard Connolly, and it's really worth a watch. Honestly, it is. It is.
I've not heard of it, but I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, it definitely opened my eyes when I watched it, and it was like, holy smokes. Like, I didn't realize that all of the engines in the trucks during World War II from the Nazis that they were driving were Fords. They were Ford engines. The Trading with the Enemy Act, and how we're allowed, so we may be at.
Oh, we brought a bunch of. We brought Nazis over to help us get to space, and they allude to it in Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah, Operation,
which is a movie. Yeah, which is a movie I actually, admittedly, I'm kind of ashamed to admit, saw for the first time recently. And I was watching that part in particular, and I'm like, wow, I'm surprised they got away with that. You don't see that in movies these days.
Yeah, he said that his movie was probably the most downloaded for a while, but it keeps getting pulled off of platforms, so it should still be there. It was the other day when I looked at it, but if it isn't, let me know, and I'll ask him where the new one is and what the address is to it. But we're like an hour and 7, and I think I took up enough of your time. It's 10 o'clock here on the West Coast, and I definitely appreciate you coming out and talking to me and, sharing a little bit of your story and your background and, just getting to know a fellow creator.
Well, thanks for having me, man. This was a lot of fun. For
sure. Hang out for just a second. I'm gonna do the outro, and then I'll connect with you down in the green room here in just a second. All right. Appreciate it again. Thanks, Ron. And everybody out there, ronplacone.com. You can find all of his social media links and all the way to connect to him on his website. Definitely check that out. And he's doing some good things. And if you haven't seen him on the Jimmy Dore Show, then you should definitely go follow the Jimmy Dore Show and watch Ron Placone on the Jimmy Dore Show, because he makes some really good points and talks about some really good stuff. And Jimmy Dore is really funny. So there you go. All right. Until next time, tomorrow I have a one scheduled 2 at 6 o'clock. Well, actually, I'm not doing a live stream right now, so never mind. If I was doing it live, that would be applicable. So, yeah. Until next time, everybody, keep it 100, stay true to yourself, and that's definitely the best way to be.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up.
On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast.
See you next time.